What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the AJRK Build It podcast. We love the feedback. We love the comments. We love the conversation. Thanks for tuning in and listening with us. My name is AJ. This is RK. I look forward to the conversation today.
Like he said, we appreciate everybody that's been giving the support and giving all the feedback and stuff like that. We're still building this thing up, no pun intended with the name of our podcast. But so as we move forward into future episodes, we will be trying to incorporate more things, more thoughts on what the information that everybody's given us and stuff like that. It's a work in progress, so have a little patience with us as far as that goes. And yeah, thanks for tuning in again.
Man, so we're going to start today off a little differently. We're still going to dedicate this episode to the prison industrial complex. And again, this is just our conversation. I think it's in today's episode we may be able to discuss some ideas on what we would think or what we would like to see. You know what I'm saying, going forward, or how we could see that money better used. But before we start, I want to address something. A lot of the critics we'll get, or a lot of the critics you get when you have conversation like this about Black Lives Matter and policing in America is you'll get things like statistics like Chicago and black on black crime, and we already discussed that, how that is not a thing. That's just a counter argument, as crime is in reference to proximity. But I do want to call out these names. Sequoia Turner, she's 8 years old. She was killed in Atlanta this weekend by gun violence. Roy DeMarco Giles, he was killed in Hoover, Alabama, shot in the head in the mall. In Washington, D.C., David McNeil, he was 11 years old. He was killed. Natalia Wallace was 7. She was killed in Chicago. And then there was also a 6-year-old that was killed in San Francisco this weekend. And that is just the small children that were killed. The one in Hoover, Alabama hit home, as that's about an hour and a half up the road. Someone went into the mall and unloaded 300 rounds in the middle of the mall. It was absolutely crazy. So when we hear things like Black Lives Matter is not speaking on the violence that we're seeing that is going on, that's not a Black Lives Matter movement. That is a Stop the Violence movement. And for whatever reason, Stop the Violence is engaged. They're in the streets. They're protesting. They're marching. You may not hear about it because it's not going to get the media coverage like Black Lives Matter has. And that's for whatever reason, but these young children were killed by senseless violence in America, and something has to give. That's a conversation we'll have to these parents. They didn't even get a chance to live their life. These parents have to deal with. I can imagine a parent having to deal with the idea of burying their child. My son, he's 8 years old, and a lot of these were 8 years old or younger. And it's absolutely crazy. These kids did nothing to deserve this. This was conducted by senseless, evil individuals that did not that refused to think of their actions, but they put their finger on that trigger, and it caused innocent lives to be taken. So I thank y'all for the opportunity for letting me call their names out. But know that noise is being made for the Stop the Violence movement also.
For sure. And before we dive into the other topic, let's just stay on this just for a minute or two. What do you think? How do you think we can go forward with kind of changing that culture to where these things are happening less and less?
So I do that. I do that a lot. I'm one of the things I do in my role as a teen pastor is I do outreach. I do what we call street reach, where we go into the inner cities and we go into the streets. A lot of when your idea of success it has to do with money and money alone. And the ones that you see have money in your neighborhood only come via the rare athletes that make it out and have the ability to go to college. And like I had one school that I mentor at, man, these dudes produce athletes. Henry Ruggs III just got picked up by the Las Vegas Raiders. He graduated from this high school. And then we had a young man that just lost his life who who had made it out and was going to that next level. But there's so many athletes that come out of this. So you're either athlete or the other people that have money, you know what I'm saying, are the ones that are hustling, the ones that are holding. So when they look up to individuals like that, then their worldview is so limited. The lack of role models sometimes we see is very prevalent. I was having a conversation the other day, and this was a tough conversation, conversation we have in the Black community all the time about the lack of fathers in the household. But you can go down the timeline pretty much to the end of World War II and see different policies that were driven by different movements that spoke to the Black male being out of the household. And now you have strong Black women, you know what I'm saying, raising these children on their own without support from Black males a lot of times. And I don't care. They're doing a lot of them. They're doing a wonderful, great job. But I'm of the firm belief that it takes a strong Black man to raise, you know what I'm saying, or it takes a strong man to raise a young man into a man. In our community, we have this thing called Black Girls Magic, and Black women are absolutely killing it. You know what I'm saying? When you look at Black women, actually have the highest out of anybody, the highest rate of individuals enrolled and graduating from college. You know what I'm saying? So they're doing amazing, you know, and being extremely successful. But one thing that the young Black girl has that the young Black boy doesn't have, the young Black girl has her mother as a mentor, as a role model, showing her, you know what I'm saying, how to live. And the young Black male doesn't have that. And that's a conversation that we need to have. So it takes us going into these neighborhoods and volunteering and being a present force and being someone that doesn't just show up to be seen, but being someone that is there, you know what I'm saying, in the long run, someone that is there in the midst. I was talking with, before all of this started, I met a young man. He was 13, 14 years old. And I asked him, like, because I believe in pulling purpose out of people. I want to see people reach their greatest potential. And I asked him, what did he want to be? And at 13 and 14 years old, and maybe his answer stuck out to me because everybody else wanted to be basketball players. But he wanted to be an engineer. And I'm like, man, that's a lofty goal. I said, what are your grades looking like? He's like, when I show up to school, my grades are pretty good. And I was like, okay, well, honestly, how often do you show up to school every week? And he said, probably 2 times a week. And I'm like, man, and I know he's extremely brilliant. And I'm like, you want to make it, but you're only showing up to school twice a week. And then I asked him, I said, well, what are you doing when you're not going to school? He's like, I'm making money. So what he sees is an ability to make money. You know what I'm saying? Instead of doing the work, he knows he has to do the work, but instead of doing that, he would rather get this right now money. And I was just like, man, what I want to do is I want to be in a position to where I can be like, you know what? I get you're making your money this way. I get you're making your money selling these drugs or doing X, Y, and Z. You know, that's going to lead to this. I have a job. Come work with me. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying to build up to get to. But it takes us being in the community. So from this standpoint, it takes us being in the community, and then from you and I, it takes us having these conversations, so that way we can vote things into legislation, to where we can see fair practices, we can see schools funded properly, to where these children have a chance to, where the schools are no longer a babysitter because they have 25 to 30 people in class, and we would say in the military, the squeaky wheel gets the attention, you know, to where the problem children are the ones getting the attention, and the ones that have the most potential, they're getting left behind, you know what I'm saying? And they're expected to do things on its own. So a lot of that, the changes we want to see come forth, a lot of that plays into it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of this violence that we see, I seen someone calling out the rap industry. I think it was Janelle Monáe was saying she wants to ban and put a strike on the rap industry just because of the lyrics that are coming out. You know what I'm saying? This gun culture, this drug culture, this misogynistic culture speaking down to women. You know what I'm saying? It frames the way we think. It frames like subconsciously. It shows us, you know what, it shows us this is what a man looks like. You know what I'm saying? If I want to be a man, I have to get so many women. I have to do X, Y, and Z. I have to drive this car. I have to do, you know what I'm saying? When all of that is fictitious and it's a lie. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah. Yeah, that's why I definitely think the whole role model idea and uh, trying to get people to volunteer and stuff like that, so you have people in these young kids' lives to
Yeah,
help shape them. Because what I was just thinking about was I was in lucky enough to be in a situation where I had both my parents in my lives, and both of my parents gave me a different kind of checks and balances to help build me up. I feel like my mom was more of the nurturer and, you know, cared about my future, but did it more from a nurturing perspective. And my dad did it more from a discipline perspective of like,
yeah,
no, it's not just about having fun and enjoying yourself right now. While that is important, he's able to see my future more than I am as a young kid. So he's
yeah.
able to help instill in me the discipline I need to have to work towards the future things that I'm going to enjoy right now, even if the work that I have to put in right now isn't as enjoyable as it will be in the future.
Definitely. And like you said, that discipline is key. Pastor Mike in Birmingham, he said when he was talking about the violence that was coming against black men, he said it didn't matter the age, you know what I'm saying? But he said, when you kill my father, you take my past, and when you kill my son, you take my future. And he said, you can't have my past and you can't have my future. And in this conversation, man, if this hits, man, I could get slapped. But this is a real conversation that we need to have. A real conversation we need to have about families being torn apart. And the thing is, I've had this conversation so many times, and it is so uncomfortable. And I'm not even. This isn't even a race conversation. This isn't a black and white people conversation. I've had this conversation amongst our people, and it's so uncomfortable because it calls your actions to the carpet. You know what I'm saying? And everybody is in a different situation for different reasons. But unless each of us looks into the mirror, because my children, you know what I'm saying, me and my wife divorced, and my children are raised, with their mother, and then I'll have them, and I try to stay as active in their life as I can. But it's a reality. And when I was going through that, man, that was one of the most difficult seasons in my life, because I didn't imagine I worked so hard to provide them with a life so that they don't fit a statistic. You know what I'm saying? So I'll make the drive every other month. I'm saying I'll drive 11 and a half hours every other month. You know what I'm saying? I'll do it. I'll do it so often because I have to be present in their life. You know, and like I said, these conversations are hard because it calls to carpet the way some people grew up thinking, the way they think as norms, but will internalize it and make it personal, not realizing that a lot of us was relegated to this behavior by laws and racist actions that were set in place in this country. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we see something being generational, or we'll use the word like generational curses. But if this is all you know, you're more than likely going to lean this way, even in the midst, even if you have a good situation. If it's almost a fight, even if you're in the middle of a good marriage, you have a good man or a good wife, you know what I'm saying, you have your family. But if you don't know that, mentally you're going to fight against that very thing. Mentally, if you don't deal with the unaffected trauma, the unaddressed trauma from your past, you're constantly going to be drawn toward it, and you're going to sabotage what's right there in front of you. So this is a very hard conversation that many communities need to have. You know what I'm saying? Because like you said, to see 6 children, like, you know what I'm saying, 6 children under the age of 10, like to see your child 8 years old get his parents were there and saw him get shot in the head. It's absolutely crazy. I have a video on my page of him performing, and you just see he had so much talent and a whole life ahead of him that was stolen just like that, all because somebody was reckless. And we see that, and that's not a color thing. We see that recklessness, this gun culture that we have in America, and I'm all for guns. I have guns and stuff, but I'm all for properly owning guns. I'm all for being trained, and adequately handling my weapon. You know what I'm saying? Like those are so imperative and those are so important, and we're not seeing it. We're seeing just senseless violence of people just pulling the gun out and pulling the trigger, not realizing that on the other end of that barrel is a life that they can claim just like that. And it's sad. And like I said, we talk about it in the policing, because police, like, everybody should know better, but they should be trained. You know what I'm saying? But it's a conversation on both sides, and that's a conversation that the movement is called Stop the Violence. And you may not hear about it like you'll hear about the Black Lives Matter movement, but man, that one is, to me, that one is just as if not more important.
Agreed.
And then also the reason you don't hear about it most times is because the ones behind those triggers, or the ones pulling the trigger, they're more than likely going to end up in jail. You know what I'm saying? They're more than likely going to end up getting punished for their crimes, if they get, and prayerfully they do get caught, because if they don't, they're just going to end up killing someone else again. But you don't hear about those, because those crimes are going to be processed and punished. The ones on the right, you know what I'm saying? The ones with the unjustified killing by the police, too often we see those not being addressed.
All right. Well, that took up about 15, so we can move on to our second topic, so we don't take up everybody's afternoon just hearing us talk.
Yeah.
Right.
So that next topic we were talking about is we're going to continue the conversation on the police culture in America. And the reason this is an important conversation to me is because when we think about this culture, it robs each and every one of us of so much. When we think about the prison industrial complex, when we think about like that is something that is so American. You know what I'm saying? If there's anything more American than our military, our guns, and our prisons. And those three things rob us of so much. We talked about last week and gave the numbers how our military spends so much money. You know what I'm saying? And the way you end up getting taxpayers to do that, the way you end up getting taxpayers to support all these prisons, you have to create fear in their mind. You have to create a boogeyman. And the moment you create a boogeyman, then they'll be like, okay, cool, use my tax dollars for that. Even though my tax dollars would probably be better spent with some kind of healthcare, with a healthcare system that was accessible to all. Even though my tax dollars would be better spent with the education system that would help out and it would alleviate violence and stuff. But we spend so much more on prisons and military than anyone else. Our military industrial complex, we spend more than, I want to say, it's the next 20 countries combined, and the majority of them are our allies. So it's absolutely crazy. And it's the same way with prisons. And the way we got here, building the bridge in the 70s. In the 70s, we started this thing called the War on Drugs. Anyone that's our age can remember what DARE stands for: Drug Abuse Resistance Education. Every single year, you used to look forward to the DARE shirt you got. I remember when they started doing the tie-dye color DAREs, and we're like, yo, but every year, every single school, every child would get a DARE shirt, and you remember the commercials of the egg in the frying pan. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? So the War on Drugs was started in 1971. Nixon declared this war on drugs. But when we look into it, the numbers didn't support this like they were pushing at the time. But the interviews, the media, everybody ran with this war on drugs, and we seen it. We said, oh, there's a pandemic in America. This needs to be addressed. XYZ, and this is where. Because it was a heightened concern for illicit drug use in America, and the main reason for this was to drive political support for an election. But what it ended up causing is what we see today. We see millions that are in jail today, and the crazy thing is about 20% of everyone that's in jail is in jail for drugs. That's absolutely crazy. 20% of the people in jail are in jail for drugs. And we were talking about policing in America, and we are talking about what the redistribution of the money that's going there. Like, we need a lot of the things we deal with. It should be professionals encountering these individuals that are in a mental health crisis, that are strung out on drugs. We see all of these, and we respond with the gun, and we respond with the police, when we should honestly be responding with other professionals. And we put these people in jail, and the thing is, the drugs get into jail also. So they're not going to get help. And we have so many people in jail today. It's crazy. We charge people 10, 15, 5 years ago. We charged them for these crimes, and now companies are making billions off of the legalized drug industry. When there are so many people that are sitting in jail, even to this day, that were making hundreds of dollars, and they're serving almost lifetime. Some of them serving lifetime sentences for the same thing people are making billions for, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But the war on drugs, I believe when I was looking at the starting point of how we got here to this huge giant of a prison system, I believe it started with the war on drugs. So with you, with everything you was looking at, what are some things you see, or questions you have,
Well,
to put out?
I did see that after the war on drugs started, that was when the prison system, I think the population like has quadrupled in the past 30 years.
Nope.
30 plus years since. So clearly that is impacting our prison population. And then in order to keep those prisons going, we're going to have to pay taxes on it.
Yep.
And then in order to keep those prisons going as well, you have to keep arresting people because there has to be a reason to have that prison.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, addressing the making money off of prisons is for sure should be something that should get addressed. I was actually thinking on my drive home, because I feel like at least the prison systems could somewhat pay for themselves, because when you have, I feel like there's so many nonviolent criminals and stuff like that, that if you could have manufacturing some kind of goods be incorporated at prisons and stuff like that, then you have then you can have people working off time. Like if they're nonviolent, maybe just for an instance, like if for some reason they had 10 years and it was nonviolent offenses or anything like that, they're not a real harm to society. Maybe even if it's a small amount of time, even if it's only a year, over the course of 9 years, they're able to work off that 10th year by some sort of manufacturing of goods. And then the goods that they're selling that they manufacture at the prisons can go right back into that prison to help run it, so less taxpayer money is having to run that prison.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, the people that are making profit, they're making billions of dollars, yet they're charging you and I. And like I said, if you create a story of the boogeyman, then people are willing. You know what I'm saying? Like, like the fear of police reform is because it's going to be chaos will ensue, when that's not necessarily what we're saying. But when when this war on drugs was started, then that's when Nixon said, hey, I need to go ahead and form the DEA. And the DEA was formed in 1973. They had a $75 million budget, and they had just over 1,470 agents. To this day, the DEA's budget is $2.03 billion a year. Their annual budget, $2.03 billion, and they have over 5,000 agents. And we have so many people engaged in this war on drugs, and it's our longest running war. If we really want to count it a war, it's our longest running war, our most expensive war. But why are we not seeing a dent? So just maybe, if someone is addicted to drugs, the answer is not putting a gun to their face, putting them in shackles, and throwing them in jail. Maybe the answer is getting them to rehab. Maybe the answer is finding help for them. But the thing is, they know that, We knew this, but that wasn't the agenda
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. I told you last week we discussed, and I looked it up today. I looked up this week his name. It came out in a 1994 interview with Nixon's domestic police policy chief, John Ehrlichman or something like that. He did an interview in 1994, and he had inside information for the campaign that the campaign of Nixon had ulterior motives, and he had two enemies. He had the anti-war left and blacks. But like I told you, they couldn't say I'm against, you know what I'm saying, the left. I can't say I'm against the black people. So what I had to say was I'm against illicit drug use of the hippies and cocaine with the black people. So now I have an enemy, you know what I'm saying, and then now I can target, and now I can heavily police these neighborhoods. I can do so much. I actually have a quote from him. He said, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. And this was done in the 70s, admitted in the 90s, but we still see it in play even to this day. You know what I'm saying? The moment you see a black person getting arrested, by the next week, you're gonna know his rap, not arrested but killed. You're gonna know his rap. You're gonna know every wrong that he's done in life. You're gonna know, you know what I'm saying, XYZ, because it's easy. If I vilify someone, then it's easy for me to justify my actions that I take against that person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But I won't say that, oh man, they need help. Oh man, now they're addicted. Oh man, I brought these drugs. We have so many reports of the drugs being brought directly into the neighborhood. If it's a war on drugs that had this much invested, they know where the drugs are coming from. They know the areas they're crossing. The thing is, if they can control the route of the flow of drugs and make them into the inner cities, like they said, I can control their leaders, I can control their communities. You know, and that's the part of the systematic racism that you and I are talking about, that you and I are trying to expose. And of course, there is another side of the coin to where there has to be accountability. But the thing is, when the odds are stacked against somebody, you know, then it's time to address and put those odds in everyone's favor, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you have to level the playing field before you can expect somebody, before you can fully hold somebody accountable.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't
And
you can't take away opportunities and replace those with negative influences and then say, okay, now act like you're from a different area and succeed.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like you and I said, if we don't know, I think we said it in week one, if you're not prepared for the opportunities of the next stage, you're more than likely going to fail on that stage, you know? So if the preparation isn't there, like I said, like we said, we spend so much money. We spend thousands housing, feeding, clothing, medical care on every single prisoner that we have in America. And the crazy thing is, when you look at the numbers, it's absolutely staggering. When we see how many youth are actually in detention facilities, that have 7,200 of them haven't even done a thing. We have 7,200 teens or younger that are being locked up and they have not been convicted of a thing, and that's absolutely crazy. But the amount of money we spend housing them, how much more could that be better used in educating them at a young age? And actually showing them the opportunities that they have if they know where they come from, if they know who they are, if they know. And like I said, we pour and we pour and we pour. And of course, no matter how much you pour, no matter how much you educate, you are always going to have those that don't grasp it. You are all
Mm-hmm.
life. The way life is made up, you are going to have those that make mistakes. That's life, though. You know what I'm saying? But that's a lot easier to deal with instead of treating a whole community or a whole nation or a whole people this way. And then because we didn't do the right steps on the front end, trying to correct it on the back end. I
Yeah.
would much rather make the investment, the right investment early and give as many people an opportunity for success as possible. And then, like they said, the right says, make America great again. That truly is making America great again when we're winning at everything. But if you look at where we rank education wise in the world, it's absolutely embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? When you look at our infrastructure, when you look at our highways, when you look at the technology, when you look at medical, we should like we have if we properly invested our money, if we properly did what we were supposed to do, our all of these issues that many won't, that many are concerned about, would automatically take care of themselves. But like I said, a lot of the things were a lot of what we're directing our attention to and pouring our money into, it's like a continual cycle. And I think there's a part of the population that is absolutely okay with us being in this wheel, doing this cycle over and over and
Well, if you're
over
making
again.
money off of it.
Exactly.
And I think it goes back to, I'm pretty sure I said it a couple weeks ago, the whole idea of putting our efforts into prevention, not reaction.
Yeah.
So much of our money is going to reactive measures to a problem rather than identifying the problem, saying, okay, let's implement this, and this before this problem exists. So then, like what you're saying, obviously there's still going to be the people that make mistakes or that choose they want to do something different. Those numbers are going to be so much smaller that we're going to be having to react to those situations than if we're not doing anything when it comes to prevention and setting people up for success.
Exactly. Man, I like where this conversation is going. I think what you think? That's a good place
Yeah, that's probably good.
to pick up next
Good
week.
place to end on for today.
Yeah. But honestly, when you approach this, when you're thinking about this and you approach this, if you're watching, honestly think about is it better to use the money on the front end and prevent this? And we're not saying concentrate on a certain people. We're saying as a whole. You know what I'm saying? On the nation as a whole. Or would you rather someone respond, and then usually when that happens, you can't even control the violence at that point. The retaliation, the so many people that are engaged in this culture. I would much rather deal with, like you said, on the front end than have to deal with the consequences on the back end. But we're going to continue this conversation, man. This is a good conversation. I enjoy it. I enjoy the articles that are coming from people. I enjoy the comments. I enjoy y'all reaching out to me personally, y'all calling me, and us having this tough conversation even on the phone. So y'all keep on doing it, man. I appreciate you. We're going to continue studying offline, and we're going to have this conversation again next week, brother.
Agreed with what AJ said. Appreciate all the good vibes that everybody's sending us. All the different things that people want us to talk about. All the stuff that people feel like might contradict or go against what we're saying. We want to hear it. We want to see it, and we want to address those things. We want this conversation to be difficult. That's the whole point. Is we're trying to show how, no matter how difficult the conversation is, we can have it, and that's what we're trying to do. So we embrace all, and we appreciate y'all.
Appreciate y'all. Salute.
Have a good one.